My lovely lady, when I think about my hidden treasure that nobody knows about, I can't help but smile. What's the matter, you ask? Well, there was an incident with the lady living downstairs. You can call me a bad guy if you want, but would you listen to my story? I was born in the countryside, the youngest of my siblings. Before I knew it, my father was a respected figure in our community. People referred to him as the boss. He belonged to the generation that had experienced war. My grandparents, having fled their homes without much to their names, took on any work they could find. Eventually, they started a business which my father then inherited and expanded. I graduated from an engineering college. My father had mentioned passing the business on to one of us, and my brother ended up working as a researcher for one of the country's most prestigious companies. He met his wife there, settled in the metropolitan area, and lives a scholarly life, while I'm more outgoing and cheerful. After graduating, I learned the ropes of the business by following my father, who owned a franchise with branches nationwide. He made enough money to buy commercial buildings and even a small mountain. After passing his skills on to me, he took up gardening as a hobby, enjoying planting fruit trees on the mountain and harvesting them. I met my wife through a mutual friend. She's 2 years younger, very pretty, and has a spirited personality. Initially, we lived with my parents, and she would call her mom daily, asking, "Mom, Dad bought fish, how do I cook this?" Despite her inexperience with housekeeping, she joined me at my business every day, and we've had 4 wonderful children together. My wife raised them to be strong and independent. It breaks my heart to see her neglect her appearance while caring for our small and slender children, so we try to go for drives whenever we can. Imagine the chores of having 4 kids in 6 years. But now, they've all grown up. There were tough times with the business, but starting a new venture brought prosperity. And we're living comfortably, supporting our children's interests and dreams. We've even taken up fishing, something I've wanted to do for a while. The sea is just an hour's drive away, and sometimes my brother joins us for fishing trips. My wife never complains about the money spent on fishing gear. So that's my story. Even if you think I'm a bad guy for the incident with the downstairs neighbor, I hope you can see the love and dedication I have for my family. Instead of just sticking to night fishing to relieve stress, my family suggested I try something different. So, I booked a deep-sea fishing trip with some friends at dawn, which they approved of. But as I explored various fishing spots, I found myself longing for a second home, one nestled in nature, despite already living in a spacious apartment. Surprisingly, my wife was quite supportive when I mentioned it. Together, we started looking for properties near the coast. However, we quickly realized that oceanfront homes were prohibitively expensive. Not wanting to give up, we heard about a good deal on a house a bit away from the beach. The seller had just finished building it and warned it would go to the next interested buyer if we didn't act fast. So I closed up shop early and rushed over. The house, situated on slightly elevated land, was perfect, complete with a space for a vegetable garden. After some discussion, my wife and I decided to stretch our budget and signed the contract. We then put in a lawn, built a nice deck, and even expanded the roof. One of the 3 bedrooms was turned into a guest room. Sometime later, my wife visited a few times and then said that now that the kids were grown, She preferred relaxing and pursuing leisure activities at our main home and wouldn't be coming to the second home as much. I was actually quite pleased with this arrangement. I began spending a couple of nights a week there, knowing the importance of getting along in a rural community. I introduced myself at the community center the day we moved in, shared rice cakes, and made a generous contribution to the village development fund. I also started greeting all the neighbors. I even met a fellow second homeowner in the area, and we hit it off, going fishing together and enjoying barbecues at each other's homes. He complimented my personality and taught me how to fillet fish. Although slow at first, the taste of the freshly prepared fish was unparalleled. Now in my 50s, with my children well raised and my business doing well, enjoying my hobbies and a rural lifestyle at my second home felt incredibly fulfilling. My parents and in-laws were thrilled when I invited them over, and my mother-in-law teared up, saying how happy she was to see us living this life after all our hard work. The village, being in a fishing area, had many vacant homes. Interestingly, I frequently ran into an elderly lady who lived just below our place. She had spent her entire life in the area. With her husband passed away and no one to fish, she lived on the allowance sent by her children. She also tried her hand at farming but struggled, killing many plants. So, I invited her over to my garden to help with weeding and planting, and she gave me invaluable advice on when to water the plants. Out of gratitude, I offered to fix anything that needed repair at my grandmother's house. She mentioned that the sink wasn't draining properly, so I went over with some tools from home and cleared out the hair and buildup blocking the sink. She felt embarrassed for not keeping things as tidy as she used to and thanked me, saying she's gotten old for such chores. I assured her it was no trouble at all. With the sink fixed, she felt relieved and invited me to stay a bit longer and watch the news. Her house was adorned with family photos, including a kind-looking grandfather. When I asked if she felt lonely living alone, she sighed and mentioned she's gotten used to it, understanding everyone's busy schedules. Her room had a lot of history books. Curious, I asked who they belonged to, and she shyly admitted they were hers, boasting perfect scores in history and social studies until high school. Given her age and the era, it was rare for someone from her region to have such an education. Sharing a love for history, we spent hours discussing various topics. I made it a habit to visit her a couple of times a week whenever I was at my second house. One evening, noticing the lights on, I knocked but got no response. The door was slightly ajar, so I let myself in, finding her on the couch. Having had a minor fall but managing to get up, I rushed her to the orthopedic clinic, where she was treated for bruises and prescribed some medication. She expressed deep gratitude, likening me to being better than her own children, and vowed to repay the kindness. A few days later, while relaxing and watching tea at my second house, she came by with snacks her daughter had sent over, including expensive roll cakes and fresh fruit juice, along with some homemade side dishes. She mentioned her leg was much better. That evening, we had dinner together, even enjoying some wine as dessert. She shared how happy she was to dine with someone again, especially a healthy and young man. Our conversation, coupled with wine, lifted our spirits even higher. But then, a sudden downpour began. Seeing her worry about heading home, I insisted she stay the night in the master bedroom instead of braving the storm. My grandmother apologized, saying she'd only be a bother for today. Before heading into the bedroom, she laughed, commenting on how comfortable the bed was, saying she was afraid of falling off because she wasn't used to sleeping in one. "I'll stay by your side until you fall asleep," I told her, as I lay down next to her. Looking at her quietly, I couldn't help but think how beautiful she was. It seemed she shared the same thought. We spent the day together, and she welcomed a healthy me with open arms. The following week, when I went to our second home, I found her waiting at the end of the street. She called me over, saying she had asked her daughter to send me a new history book. After parking, I went into her house and saw that she had gotten the same small bed as mine in the bedroom, mentioning how it had made her leg and back pains less bothersome. I had a pleasant time at my grandmother's house. A few days later, my wife surprisingly suggested we visit the second home together, which scared me since my meetings with my grandmother were a secret. I tried to dissuade her, saying the country life was boring, but she pressed on, asking if there was something going on there. With no choice, we went together. My grandmother came over to our house after seeing my car, not knowing my wife was with me. I promised her I'd come over after my wife fell asleep. I managed to sneak out and had a wonderful time without waking my wife. Luckily, my wife slept deeply and didn't find out. My grandmother even offered to introduce me to other ladies in the neighborhood. I only had eyes for her, but she seemed okay with me spending time with others, saying, "If you're happy, I'm happy." An old woman like me seeing a younger man has to expect this, with a mysterious smile. But honestly, I'm not sure how she truly feels about it. I wonder if she'd really be okay if I actually wanted to meet others. Not only is my grandmother beautiful on the outside, but her heart is also lovely.